I'd like to start by thanking the UN Special Rapporteur on Toxics and Human Rights, Dr. for bringing us together this afternoon to reflect on the thematic report that he presented this week to the Council, entitled Pollution Information Portals, Strengthening Access to Information on Releases of Hazardous Substances. The Special Rapporteur said event is co-convened with the permanent missions of the United States and Mexico, and the Geneva Environment Network. I am myself, the coordinator of the UN Geneva Environment Network, bringing together the actors and institutions of international Geneva, contributing to advance the global environmental agenda to tackle the triple crisis of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. Chemicals, waste, and pollution are important topics for international Geneva, as we hosted numerous conventions and agencies addressing these issues, including the Global Framework on Chemicals, which is the equivalent of the Paris Agreement for pollution crisis, if I may use this example. I will have the pleasure to moderate this event and will be introducing the speakers as I speak them. We are joined this afternoon by leading experts and diplomats to discuss and share experience and good practices around pollution information portals. We will also aim the discussion today to identify ways in which countries could establish and strengthen pollution information portals. To formally welcome you, I now invite the Deputy Permanent Representative of Mexico to the United Nations office here in Geneva, His Excellency Ambassador Fernando Espinosa Rivera, to deliver opening remarks and sharing Mexico's experience on the subject. Mexico is one of the champions in making links among international processes on this specific issue. Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madame Risolio. Excellencies, distinguished panelists, colleagues, dear friends, representatives of civil society, it's a pleasure to be here. Bienvenidos, welcome, bienvenue. It is an honor, really, for Mexico to participate and co-sponsor this important side event organized by the Special Rapporteur on Toxic and Human Rights, Mr. Marcos Orellana, and the Geneva International Network. Spaces like these are essential to discuss the importance of guaranteeing the right to access information on environmental matters, particularly about the management of hazardous substances and waste, and to share some of our best practices in a constructive and collaborative manner. Mexico has taken a strong stance on access to information as a fundamental human right guaranteed by Article 6 of our Constitution. This right extends to the environment where accessible information plays a key role in protecting both the environment and public health. Our Pollutant Release and Transfer Register, which is RTC en español, RETC, implemented since 2004, is one of the cornerstones of our environmental policy, allowing the management of information on over 200 hazardous chemicals. The RETC promotes transparency and drives continuous improvement in environmental performance. Over 35,000 industrial facilities in Mexico report their emissions, which has led to more effective public policies and improved monitoring. Since the RETC's inception, we have seen a 15% reduction in hazardous chemical emissions, reflecting its positive impact on both the environment and public health. Internationally, Mexico actively promotes cooperation on pollutant management. Through the Commission for Environmental Cooperation of North America, it's called CCA, we have developed the Taking Stock initiative, which integrates pollutant registers from Canada, the United States, and Mexico. Each year, the substances released to air, water, or land sent to disposal or transferred to recycling or other management are reported by industrial facilities to our national registers. This project brings together the data for approximately 40,000 industrial facilities across the region and makes them, which is the most important thing, accessible via the Taking Stock online website and searchable database. This joint initiative has improved transparency, fostered cooperation, and led to a reduction of over 30% in certain atmospheric pollutants over the past 15 years. Colleagues, dear friends, the environmental crisis we face today demands open cooperation and transparent information. Developing open, comprehensive, and accessible portals of information on pollutants are fundamental, not only to guarantee our need or right to know, but also to contribute to the empowerment of key actors like environmental human rights defenders, indigenous people, or youth movements in preventing and reducing pollution. Mexico reaffirmed its commitment to environmental information as a human right and a vital tool for planetary protection. We will continue to strengthen our national records, promote international cooperation, and work across sectors to continue preventing and mitigating the risk of hazardous substances. Many thanks again for inviting us to participate in this side event, and we look forward to having a fruitful exchange among the excellent panelists and the audience here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Excellency, for your welcome remarks and for setting the scene for this discussion. Now we turn to the Special Rapporteur on Toxics and Human Rights, who will now continue setting the scene for our discussion. He will provide our audience with the overview of the report that he presented yesterday to the Council and some of the key messages he addressed.
Thank you very much, Diana, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, colleagues. Thank you very much for joining this conversation today. I wish to also thank from the outset the co-conveners of this event, the United States of America, Mexico, along the Geneva Environment Network. Yesterday I had the opportunity to present a thematic report on pollution information portals to the Council. Where did this idea originate from? If we recall, a couple of years back, the UN General Assembly recognized for the first time at the global level the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. And so there was a lot of questions about what's next and the challenge of implementation. And here is a concrete tool for the implementation of this right in the context of a global pollution crisis. I don't need to get into the scientific evidence of this crisis. I do want to focus on solutions, and solutions demand information on what pollutants are being emitted, where, in what volumes, by whom, and so forth. And pollution information portals can help answer these questions, and since so doing, they become a fundamental tool for good governance, for corporate accountability, and certainly for the implementation of the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment, among other rights, the right to information, the right to science, and others. What we've also seen in the development of this field is a trend from first-generation portals that disclose data to a second-generation portals that transform data into knowledge. They do so by introducing description of pollutants, by engaging communities with the results of the information that is being disclosed. As I mentioned yesterday, the importance of pollution information portals can be seen from the perspective of their users. And I'd like to start with regulators. It's often the case we start with communities, but authorities, in the first place, they need information to be able to assess risk and prioritize and adopt regulations and enforce regulations where they're adopted. Without this information, such governance of environmental and toxics matters is not adequate or even possible. And certainly communities, in order to participate meaningfully in those decision-making processes, need that information as well. The possibility of taking action to prevent risks, to mobilize in dealing with these matters. Businesses are another user that merits attention, because in the market playing field, if a business derives a competitive advantage by externalizing risks and harms on communities, well, that is a cause for concern. If we look back in time and see where this model originated, we must turn our attention to the tragedy in Bhopal, India, 40 years ago. The victims still struggling for justice. 40 years ago, a leak of gas from a pesticide manufacturing facility killed tens of thousands of people. Many more, hundreds of thousands of people have been adversely affected by the massive pollution that has been released from the site. So this has become a sacrifice zone in a systematic breach of human rights. Now, as a result of that tragedy, communities in the United States mobilized and got the US Congress to adopt a Right to Know Act that set up a toxic release inventory. And that instrument looked at the only portal that existed at the time in the Netherlands. And since, there have been a number of countries that have adopted pollution information portals, mainly from the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, and a handful developing countries. Since then, there have been also multilateral agreements, such as the Aarhus Convention on Access to Information, Public Participation, Access to Justice in Environmental Matters, its Kiev Protocol on pollution, pollutant release and transfer registries, and also more recently the Escazú Agreement on Environmental Rights in Latin America and the Caribbean. Both Aarhus and Escazú commit their parties to take steps in setting up these portals. In the last Conference of the Parties of Escazú, there was a special session organized to take stock on the progress in this matter. Not sufficient progress, as you can imagine, but still opportunities for South-South collaboration and for applying good practices. I don't want to extend too much, but I do want to point to two gaps that existing models exhibit. One is the lack or insufficient pollution prevention mandate. And where pollution information portals do a good job at distributing information, but are not associated with a pollution prevention mandate, there can be a false sense of complacency, a confusion of ends and means. The point is to address the global pollution crisis, not just simply to distribute information. So that's the first point. And the second gap that I wish to highlight in these few minutes is on coverage. Coverage of point sources, say the number of pollutants or the types of pollutants that may be covered, or coverage in regards to diffuse sources. There are many portals that do not address transportation as a diffuse source, or agriculture, so pesticides may fall through the cracks. There are gaps that need to be addressed there. So I will stop there and thank the panelists for taking the time of their schedule to join this conversation, and back to you, Diana.
Thank you very much, Mr. Special Rapporteur. We'll indeed now reflect on the findings of your report, and we will have a series of presentations and presentations on work that various institutions have been doing. And we will start the reflections with Christophe Dussault, who works at the Secretariat of the Aarhus Convention and its protocol on PRTRs. So everybody has understood that PRTRs are the pollutant release and transfer registers, but we will be using a lot this acronym. And Christophe supports in the Secretariat of the Aarhus Convention the bodies and activities under the PRTR protocol. So Christophe, you will be introducing to us the work that you're doing.
I'm very happy to have received the call for input to this very important report, and now the invitation to this side event. I also want to express our appreciation to the US and Mexico for the long-standing cooperation on PRTRs under the joint activities with OECD. And I want to start just by highlighting some of the key experiences from implementing the protocol, which is first that investing in pollution information systems is to invest in infrastructure needed to reduce and prevent pollution. Second, since the adoption of the protocol on PRTRs in 2003, over 20 years ago, significant progress has been made in digital transformation, database management, and coordination of information across sectors and across the life cycle of products. So this now helps us moving forward building useful information systems. And third, the process of implementing pollutant release and transfer registers, PRTRs, often changes the way stakeholders communicate with each other. This is something that has been shown in several countries implementing PRTRs, that respect and trust can be created in this process. As I already mentioned, I'm part of the Secretariat to the Aarhus Convention and the Protocol on PRTRs. So from the start, both instruments have been designed as open to all UN member states, and we invite interested member states to consider ratification and contact the Secretariat for more detailed information about the instruments if interested. Both are legally binding instruments that contribute to the protection of the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. They fulfill the fundamental right to know with regard to environmental issues. Among other aspects, the Convention and the Protocol establish international standards for digital environmental information portals. While the Convention details important aspects related to public access to environmental information, participation in decision-making, and access to justice, the Protocol defines the required elements to build an information system that provides user-friendly access to data on pollutant releases and transfers of waste. So very briefly, the Aarhus Convention has relevant provisions related to PRTR. And so the Convention establishes states' obligations to ensure that public authorities collect, provide upon request, and disseminate to the public routinely, and also in case of threats to human health and the environment, the environmental information, including on chemicals, waste, and other substances. Each party also shall establish mandatory systems of adequate flow of information to public authorities about proposed and existing activities which may significantly affect the environment, and take steps to establish progressively, taking into account international processes where appropriate. So this is the provision text. A coherent nationwide system of pollution inventories or registers on a structured, computerized, publicly accessible database compiled through standardized reporting. So why did I go through this? Because this provision paved the way to the adoption of the Kiev Protocol on PRTRs. The Kiev Protocol on PRTRs became international law, binding its parties in October 2009. Pollutants are defined there, which is one of the only definitions, as far as I'm aware, for what are pollutants, as substances that may be harmful to the environment or to human health on account of their properties, so for example toxicity, and of their introduction into the environment, the release of the pollutant into the air, water, or soil. By bringing information on polluting emissions into the public domain, PRTRs raise awareness about major sources of threat to health and the environment, and enable the public to play a more effective role in participating in the decision-making processes related to such threats. The resulting increase in transparency can create pressure on polluters to reduce the pollution burden arising from their activities. Furthermore, through integrating PRTRs with other environmental and socio-economic databases, and this is very important, the context to the data, decision makers can use them also for different purposes such as spatial planning, risk assessment, assessment of resource consumption, transition to a circular economy, etc. Due to the cross-cutting nature of PRTRs, they help to achieve a number of SDGs, including SDG 3 on health, SDG 9 on industry and infrastructure, SDG 12 on production and consumption. PRTRs also support other related processes, such as the Global Framework on Chemicals, adopted last year, September, and existing and future multilateral environmental agreements with pollution-related reporting obligations. We also learned during the implementation of the protocol on PRTRs that the regular and structured exchange between countries, NGOs, and organizations in our meetings makes it significantly easier for stakeholders to overcome all the different hurdles and understand the full potential of pollution information portals by hearing what others are doing. The protocol on PRTRs is the only example of applying detailed, legally binding standards on how data on pollutants must be made available to the public. A number of policy instruments, such as the OECD Council Act on PRTR, also supports promotion of PRTRs. Today, over 70 countries coming from all regions have committed to develop PRTR systems. That includes legal commitments under the Aarhus Convention, the Protocol on PRTRs, the Escazú Agreement, and the moral commitments stemming from OECD membership. There are also targets associated with PRTR, increasing geographic and global coverage of different pollution information portals, and their interoperability between each other can be achieved, by example, by promoting ratification of the protocol on PRTRs. However, for example, there are not so good examples from the past. There was a target set in the strategic approach to international chemicals management, a global plan of action, CICOM Global Plan of Action, for PRTRs to be established in all countries by 2015. So that has obviously not been achieved. But now there's also, under the new Global Framework on Chemicals, a new similar target B3, to by 2035 stakeholders generate data on emissions and releases of chemicals and waste to the environment, and making these data available and publicly accessible. So we need to make an effort to get the financial resources and other resources that are necessary to reach that target. And this is only 10 years, almost, well, 11 still, but it's coming to an end. To finish, just some information. Our next meeting will be in November, in the International PRTR Week in Geneva, between 18th and 22nd of November. During that week, there will be on 20th and 21st of November the 4th Global Roundtable on PRTRs, organized together with OECD and in cooperation with UNITA and UNEP. And the Secretariat, we will be happy to provide you with details on those meetings. And should you be interested, please to participate and exchange with other interested countries and stakeholders on the topic, please don't hesitate to contact us. To conclude, I want to highlight that ultimately, generating the political will is necessary to change the existing patterns and improve our knowledge, for example, about alternative production methods to reduce pollution. We also need to better understand the current status quo and the possible impact on and by stakeholders in starting to do things differently than what we do today. So these are the elements where really the public participation in the development of PRTR systems, and this is required under the protocol on PRTR, comes into play. Good information portals help us with all of that. They are infrastructure we need to make informed choices. Data, information, and knowledge that enable us to understand where we are, analyze what impact changes may have on the current status quo, and last but not least, really to communicate with each other and trigger action by decision makers. Without information, all of this is not possible. The Aarhus Convention and the Protocol on PRTRs provide the related international minimum standards for such user-friendly data collection and making the information accessible for all. I invite you to join our meetings and start benefiting from the international exchange on the topic. Thank you.
Many thanks. Many thanks to do so. Our next guest is now Moritani, who is joining us from the Environmental Health and Safety Division of Mauritania will speak about OECD activities around the pollution information portals. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I'm Naoko Moritani, administrator in the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. And congratulations to the Special Rapporteur for the publishment of the report. I think your recommendations cover various points which countries can follow. And I'd like to also express my appreciation to the United States and Mexico. Your countries have been contributing to our OECD activities on PRTRs. So I believe that the OECD activities would support countries to follow the recommendations written in the report. So let me introduce some of the examples of our activities in the OECD, starting from the next slide. So before going to the examples, I would like to explain about our activities under the Environment, Health and Safety Program. Our PRTR program is one of the key programs of this EHS program. We have 38 member countries, many partner countries, and other stakeholders working together to develop and coordinate activities on chemical safety and biosafety on an international basis. The main objectives of our program include assisting OECD member countries' effort to protect human health and the environment. Our work focuses on decreasing each country's effort and avoid duplication of work for establishing and enhancing the pollution information portals, which is a PRTR system. So how do we assist countries regarding PRTRs? Going to the next slide. We do assist countries regarding PRTRs by developing guidance documents and sharing good practices and harmonizing PRTRs for the better management of pollutants in the world. So we have 3 focus areas regarding the PRTRs program. Improving PRTRs, enhancing the use of PRTR data, and harmonizing PRTRs. Let me introduce some of the examples of our activities. This is our OECD Global PRTR dashboard. We published this dashboard in 2021 using PRTR information we aimed at using PRTR information to evaluate progress towards the SDG 12. We have 39 countries' PRTR data. Not only the PRTR data, but also we have this contextual information. For example, toxicity impact scores, which shows risk to the human health or risk to the environment. So this contributes to cultivate a better understanding of how we have been making progress towards the SDG and better chemicals management. I'd like to go to the next example of our activities. On the next slide, so this is another dashboard regarding our PRTR activities. This dashboard compiles good practices of the data uses and tools for their presentations, which are collected from our OECD member countries. And this dashboard illustrates the varied uses of PRTR data and encourage additional audiences to access the PRTR data. So you can see, if you go to the website, our OECD website, you can see how countries and stakeholders provide contextual information by using the PRTR data and tools to the public. So this is another good example of our activities. Finally, we going to the next slide, we also have other databases and tools to assist countries. I would like to pick up one tool, IOMC toolbox, and explain it in the next slide. This is a problem-solving tool that enables countries to identify appropriate and efficient national actions to address PRTRs. So this PRTR section was made based on several guidance documents, including the guidance documents on element of PRTRs, which were introduced in the report by the Special Rapporteur. So this tool would support countries to establish or strengthen pollution information portals or PRTR systems. So this is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Ms. Maritani. We now move to our next expert who has pre-recorded his presentation. Geneva Environment Network is the head of the Toxic and Waste Program at Arnica. Arnica is a Czech non-profit organization which does also a lot of work internationally. And Genrik will present information that you can find in a report that he will also mention. A report that has been published by Arnica, which includes information on the practical implementation of PRTRs at a national level. So I will ask the colleagues to kindly launch the presentation.
Good day to everyone. My name is Jindřich Petlík and I work with Arnica Association and also as an expert on dioxin and POPs waste for International Pollutants Elimination Network. Today I would like to share with you information which we gathered also in the report called Pollutant Release and Transfer Register and Civil Society. As you can see, this report includes a lot of information and gathered also case studies on civil society from the different parts of world and also different aspects of PRTR. Civil society, for example, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, used PRTR data to address pollution from metallurgical industry and brown coal firing power plants. If you look at various aspects of PRTR systems, we find out that it is important to have reporting every year. Facility-specific reporting, PRTR needs to cover all releases and transfers, and it has to be accessible on public domain on internet. Regarding the specification on reporting thresholds, we found out that most advanced system is just based on quantity thresholds. This is example from Czech Republic, which shows how the reporting decreased by introducing additional threshold by manufacturing process. In Czech Republic, we use data from PRTR for top 10s of worst polluters in the country. Since 2015, we introduced this application, which shows the data per each facility, and these top 10s also helped to decrease total releases of carcinogens, which is visible also on reporting in Czech PRTR throughout the more than 15 years. If we go further, the Czech PRTR is specific that it reports chemically specific on transfers in waste, and you can see difference between the information which you can obtain comparing to non-chemical specific reporting. This is data for the specific special municipal waste incinerator in the Czech Republic. Another example can be fly ashes from power plants which contain high levels of arsenic, and you can see that the red bars which represent arsenic in waste transfers are much higher than air or water releases, and we use these data to save the habitat of endangered species, which was planned to be destroyed by dumping or kind of use for remediation of the wetlands in some area in the Czech Republic. Another example how we used chemically specific reporting on waste is calculation of total releases or total transfers of dioxins in waste incineration fly ashes, which we gathered in several reports available on ResearchGate, and it helped us to calculate total amount of transfers of dioxins in waste incineration fly ashes, which is equal to tolerable intake for 133 planets Earth population. This is closely related to the reporting to international conventions, and here is another example how it is important to have data on mercury in waste transfers. And another aspect which we found very important is to cover also releases for small and medium enterprises. Here are examples of such enterprises or activities in Indonesia, like in artisanal small-scale gold mining or producing lime in kilns where they use plastic waste as a fuel. Fishermen communities are one of those very much affected by toxic releases, and for example, various cyanide spills can be quite well mapped by using PRTR data. So this was very brief dive into our report, and let me to stress one of the so some parts of recommendations from OECD, that the results of PRTR should be made accessible to all affected parties. And also we suggest that the entire process of establishing PRTR system and its implementation and operation should be transparent and objective. Thank you very much for your attention to this brief presentation, and have a nice day.
So we will now turn to our the last expert that we have invited to join this panel. Yves Lador is the representative to the United Nations here in Geneva for Justice, and he will be also speaking on behalf of the European Environmental Bureau, EEB. Mr. Lador will tell our audience why the Special Rapporteur was so right to explore the in-depth PRTRs. Mr. Lador, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. First, let me start to thank the organizers and the sponsors for inviting me. And again, as it has been said, also to thank the Special Rapporteur for doing this report on such an important tool, and also for absolutely all, every one of them, of the recommendations. And I'd like to also to thank the previous rapporteur presentations, and I'll just see how I can add to what they have been said. As it was said, my presentation is really here done in collaboration with the European Environmental Bureau, who is working on these issues very closely. I know that Christophe works in a very close relation with them. So, I'm not pushing the good button. and here we are. The very first thing, of course, as it has been said, is that one of the issues having PRTR or pollutant information portals, which is a more generic names. In the US, we talk about TIER because you have another acronym. So in order not to be too lost in that, I'll try to speak about PRTR or PIPs, both of them. Of course, one of the very first thing is to see what do we have, what is the toxicity of what we have in our environment and what we have in the production process and so on, because a lot of it is not available just through our normal senses. So we need that. But clearly, pollution information portals really go beyond that. And I want to quote what the ambassador of Mexico has just said about the question of empowerment. These are tools for empowerment. So they are human rights tools. They're not just administrative and very complicated process of information. They go much further than that. This was already shown in the previous OECD report, so I'll go very quickly. But this is to say, we know that we have throughout the planet a problem of dark areas, in the sense that you have very little data on some areas. So the question here, and it's very clear through the reports of the Special Rapporteur, this is not just an issue for OECD countries. It has to be universal, and that's what we're talking about toward universal PIPs 2.0, because it has to become universal, and there are a number of information that has been collected in area here, for example, and you have something about West Africa, but for example, all of the companies who are exporting or importing goods have information from their value chain. This is usually not well enough looked after. And these are sources of information, even in places where you might not have a very sophisticated information collection system. So, very first point, here in the, what you have here in this table is the middle line and the box to the right. Actually, this reproduces the Article 1 of the Kiev Protocol, and it underlines that the PRTR, because that's the name for the protocol, is, of course, to enhance public access to information. This has been said more than once. But it goes much further than that. It is an instrument for public participation and also to contribute to prevention and reduction. And when we say public participation, it means, of course, direct participation in the decision-making process. But it's also a tool which helps implementation of policies, because you also have indirect participation. If you don't have enough information about the areas where you are, you're going to have to guess how dangerous it is to go or not to go there, to buy a house in that place or not, to fix yourself there, and so you'll just guess. This makes urban planning just unmanageable, because people will just go guessing, and then it's very difficult for you to try to, have flows and manage urban planning in a very coherent way. You need strong information. So when we say participation, you have the active participation in the decision-making process, where you need strong data information so that you can have an informed decision. But you also have all of the other types of participation, in a way, participation by your foot, by just walking away from different places or gathering in other places. And these are decisions which are based on information. So these portals have a much wider impact than just a purely administrative approach. Another element which is also extremely important is that why are PRTR absolutely central? Well, one of the things is that in the Kiev protocol, in Article 1, you have also an element which is very strong, which is BAT. BAT is an acronym for the best available technology or techniques. And this is part of Annex 1 of the protocols, and that goes by sector, which means you have here a criteria in order to evaluate what is the performance of the different actors, how do they deal with the toxicity issues that they have under their control. So it's extremely important to use this tool and to use it in order to aggregate a vast number of information that comes from other areas. That's why we're talking about PRTR 2.0, because, for example, you have information in the way permits are given. This can be easily collected, but it's not usually directed or included in the PRTR mechanism. Same thing about a number of reporting systems that you have in different areas. I won't get into the techniques, but it's just for us to understand that the PRTR can be really the central tool to gather information that you have in other sources. And that's why, for example, I presented before the other map on Africa, which was not PRTR linked, but it is exactly the type of information that you can collect, and that's where we need to improve the PRTRs so that you can have this information inside this mechanism. So, to give an example, and this is what the EEB has done, and you can find this on the EEB website. They have developed an integration tool where you can bring together existing information, and you can then go and to compare plants themselves. And that's something which is extremely important for everybody, for us, for the industry, for the public authorities. And for example, here, you can see for NOx and for sulfur and also for mercury, you can see some of the levels, the thresholds which exist, and these are the bars. But then you have the small squares. These squares show where plants are situated in terms of emissions. And here you can see that you can find some plants in the same country, in the same area, where, or perhaps not in the same area, but under the same jurisdiction, with the same type of regulation, who are performing very differently. So here you have an instrument where you can go into the details and try to evaluate what is the performance. And it's exactly what the Special Rapporteur has said. You must not just provide information that everybody can use. You must try to use it in a contextualized and dynamic way so that you can see how this is performing. It has to go beyond just the question of providing information where we are. And this is really an example that you can see here. We see that, for example, with the red dots, you have here plants which are not performing well at all, and you have others which are performing very well. And so you also have here a possibility to have a tool, of course this is within the EU context, to compare the performance within countries, or plants even within countries. Because very often you have the same techniques, the same process, and the same regulation, but you have very, very different results. And of course, if you only have average, you can't see that. You don't see the dynamic. And that's what we need to have with these type of instruments. It's the dynamic to have stronger policies. It's also a dynamic we need with the instruments to see how our rights can be better implemented. So in conclusions, when we say recommendations for PRTR 2.0, it's because we have here with the PRTR an instrument that officially includes the benchmarking on the basis of the best available technologies. So then you can evaluate what the different industry, the actors in the industry are doing. And the actors in the industry themselves, as it was said by the Special Rapporteur, those who are doing the best work, they want to have more of this. Because they want to be, rewarded for the efforts they're doing. And if it's just drawn into the data, you don't have this feedback. And the second thing is to see that, as it was said by the Special Rapporteur, this kind of human rights-based approach, and this is a tool for a human rights-based approach, helps to have a real implementation of the right to a healthy and sustainable environment. Because it helps to integrate the data, it helps to have a more coherent policy, and it shows also the relevance of the policies which are being enacted by the different countries. So this is really a tool to protect better environment and human rights. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lador.
We have some time for questions, so now that we have heard the information on those
pollution information portals, looking at the room, if there are any questions to our experts, or if the Special Rapporteur wants to add something on some of the comments that were made by the experts. I don't see questions, so maybe you want to. Yes, please. Okay, start.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I just want to highlight two more points. One is really that compared to other processes in the field of chemicals and waste management, pollution information portals and systems receive too little attention and funding. So much more needs to be done to support this basic tool that allows and facilitates so many of our other activities in this area. And the second one is that there's a wealth of views regarding the scope, the design, and the use of pollution information systems that is so large. And we always highlight that common minimum standards that facilitate the exchange and cooperation must go also hand in hand with designing your national system with a focus really on the national needs and concerns. There's no one system that really is what I want to highlight. And this is really what will ensure then the usefulness of the data collected because it's adapted to your national needs and the continuous political support and the long-term commitment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tussaud. Yes, please introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Bridget Armand. I'm with the Center for International Human Rights at Northwestern Pritzker School of Law in Chicago in the United States. I was really excited by your comments, Mr. Lador, about the implications for companies operating in, let's say, for example, Europe, where there are much stronger due diligence requirements, but are sourcing from parts of the world where those requirements may not exist and the transparency may not exist. So I'm wondering if any of these pollution information portals are requiring companies, an individual company, to report not only its own emissions, for example, but also pollution and emissions from the companies with which it does business. Thank you.
Any other question? Otherwise, I suggest, Mr. Elana, that you answer and also close, make a final statement here.
Yes, well, you have a number of requests, and actually when we want to improve, we also have some problems, even already at home, to have stronger standards in order to be developed. My comment actually was also saying that other countries who do not have such a system yet, because they say, oh, we're lacking information, can find information in existing sources. Even if their own system is not yet that well developed. That was really the very first point I wanted to do. Now, of course, I definitely would follow your point also, saying this should be added to the type of information and the impact. You do have it actually through other, and that's one of the issues why we should integrate this, because when you see that you now have a number of obligations for companies to report how they behave with their subsidiaries and a number of their partners under other type of European jurisdictions. Again, this is an information that should be added in the system itself. So that's why we're saying we need now to continue, and the recommendations done by the Special Rapporteur go precisely in this direction. It helps to go to what we call, it's a buzzword, but it's really the idea to have a PRTR 2.0, because we need to go forward. We must not leave the instruments as they are very useful, but we must not leave them just as they are at this moment. It has to go further.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ador. I think the final word is now for the Special Rapporteur.
Thank you, Diana, and thanks to all the panelists for your insightful comments. Time is tight, so I will only close by making 2 points. The first one is that pollution information portals can and should be seen as an element of due diligence in the discharge of human rights obligations concerning pollution and toxics. And this is because access to information is essential for prevention, reduction, and control of pollution. And secondly, as has been stated by several panelists, international cooperation in this area offers ample opportunities. There is a wealth of knowledge accumulated in decades of experience by a number of countries, by international organizations, that can be put to that use. And there's also a need in so many parts of the world to set up these tools for the implementation of the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. To establish PRTRs, pollution information portals 2.0, but also to sustain them. And that requires international cooperation and assistance. It requires resources, expertise, know-how, capacity building. And so therefore the call that I made yesterday to the Council for increased attention on PIPI's pollution information portals as a tool, as a concrete tool for international cooperation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Special Rapporteur. The next event should have started one minute ago, so we'll have to leave the room. But we would like to thank you all, the experts who have joined this panel, but also to everybody here in the room who has watched us online. Also wanted to mention that tomorrow we will have the Geneva Tax-Free Talks with the Special Rapporteur taking place in Building H or online, so I invite you also to join us in that occasion. Thank you very much for being with us.